Okay, let's talk about the Kansas City Chiefs' really, quite frankly, poor offensive line performance. What went wrong? Well, first, to talk about what went wrong, we have to talk about kind of what went wrong this season. They entered the year after having a really bad performance at left tackle last year, wanting to improve, so they drafted Kingsley Sumatea, who was actually Penei Sewell's cousin, in the second round. Sumatea was very bad, and they kind of were scrambling to try and figure something else out. These are the five they ended up on throughout this, towards the end of the season, and who played in the postseason and played in the Super Bowl. So Joe Thuney, usually a left guard, moved to right guard. Mike Caliendo is not a left guard. He started the year as a backup, gets thrown in there at left guard, and then you have Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith. Those two guys are really good starters. Jawan Taylor is not the best, but he's at least out there, I guess, but he's really not a great player there either. So that's kind of the situation. Left tackle, kind of a question mark. Thuney has had some good games at tackle, some not so good games at tackle, but at the end of the day, he is playing out of position despite being a star player. Not the best at left guard or right tackle. That's the situation going into this game. So first, let's talk right tackle. Jawan Taylor definitely had his moments where he struggled. He was not the worst offender in this game, but he definitely had some bad moments. This one, you see it's Jalix Hunt, who, worth mentioning, was drafted after Kingsley Sumatea, is able to generate some pressure when Mahomes tries to scramble out, is able to create enough contact, forcing Mahomes to miss the throw. Again, not the worst rep in the world by Jawan Taylor, but still enough pressure to disrupt the play. Okay, but now let's talk about the guard situation. So we knew going in, the guard situation might not be the best. Well, what happens? Okay, so here we are. You see right now, this is kind of the dilemma you play if you're going up against a guy like Jalen Carter. What the Eagles did was put Carter against the right tackle, who, as I said, Trey Smith is good. The issue, though, is if you're the Chiefs, do you want to leave Trey Smith one-on-one against Jalen Carter? Probably not. That's probably not going to work. So they're still going to double team him, but essentially what you're doing now is taking your two best offensive linemen and forcing them to double team, meaning that your other three offensive linemen have one-on-one matchups. Here, for the left guard, Mike Caliendo, who, again, has pretty much been a backup all season, you see Milton Williams, who's a really nice interior defensive lineman, is just winning this rep pretty significantly. Again, the game is so lopsided, you can purely pass rush. That's going to help these defensive linemen for sure, right? But as you see, watch how he's able to knock that ball loose. The Eagles recover and are able to get another 3 points and kill some more clock. Again, the game was over at this point, but still, it just goes to show the way it was going. So what about Joe Thuney then? Okay, so we're having an issue at left guard because, sure, we kind of knew that. We're having an issue at right tackle. Okay, sure, we kind of knew that. And again, the Eagles pass rush so well, even good offensive linemen can struggle against them. But the left tackle thing, kind of the reason you made this move was to at least be better at the left tackle position because that was such an issue. Well, here you have Josh Sweat going up against Joe Thuney. Watch how he's going to generate enough pressure to push Thuney back. Mahomes ends up throwing an interception, and so, the contact definitely affected that. I think it's probably a catch if there wasn't that contact, so definitely a big play there. So this is the question that I am going to ask is, do you think that the Chiefs should have made a move, and maybe they should have said, you know what, let's go back to what we had done earlier in the year. These were the two other players that you could have considered at the tackle position. Wanya Morris, who actually was inactive in this game, he got the most amount of snaps, but they decided that DJ Humphries was going to be the backup tackle for this game. DJ Humphries, you see his PFF grade all the way to the right. It's not a very good grade, but keep in mind, it's only about 90 snaps, so small sample size hasn't looked great in that small sample size. However, I do wonder, should you have maybe considered going to Humphries? Because, well, I don't know if he would have been any better than Mike Caliendo. In fact, I don't think he would have been. You're at the very least now only making yourself bad at 2 positions instead of being bad at 3 positions. Because then what that can do is allow you to do something like this, where you can double team the guys off the edge. Okay, both your left tackle and right tackle have issues, and that's going to be a problem. We remember how big of an issue that was the last time the Chiefs lost the Super Bowl against Tampa Bay. But in that game, they didn't really help out their tackles. Here, you can do something like this, where you can have, your halfback and a tight end just kind of chip the edge rushers every play. It can at least give yourself a chance. In my opinion, it's so difficult to say that, right? It's so easy in hindsight to say, oh, this is what you should have done. But in the moment, I mean, you have those guys there for a reason. It worked, I don't want to say all season, but at least all postseason, because it kind of came together late in the year. But I do think in hindsight, this is probably what they should have done. And worth mentioning, it's not a guarantee to work even if you double team some of these edge rushers, right? Like on this play, they put extra attention on some of these guys. Like they tried to have extra players blocking. Like it wasn't like the Chiefs, again, that Tampa Bay game when they kind of, I think, foolishly didn't help out their offensive line. Here they tried, they weren't able to do it. I do wonder though, if you just put Thuney back at guard, it at least gives you 3 good offensive linemen instead of 2, right? I think that's simple. Now, I also want to say that I think there's this idea that this always happens after a game when there's a bad offensive line performance. People act like there's nothing the offense could have done. But just going back and rewatching this game just to try and get footage for this, it's worth mentioning there were plenty of plays like this where watch what's going to happen. Patrick Mahomes is going to run a play action right here. He looks down the field for a while. Pausing it right here, we're nearly 5 seconds into the play. There's nothing open. I mean, this is great protection because of the play action. It worked. They have a ton of room, but nothing's getting open down the field. And so it was very much not that like Mahomes was pressured every play. What are you going to do? Like there were plays like this. You see Mahomes on this one just takes the check down, and honestly good tackling by the Eagles to not give up too much as well. So again, the Eagles defense was working throughout, and also Mahomes turned the ball over a couple times. That's not good either. So there were a lot of issues besides just the offensive line. That's just what, again, when you lose and your offensive line plays bad, that's what gets all the attention. So I do kind of think I would lean on I think this was a mistake by the Kansas City Chiefs. I think they should have probably gone out of their way to, help out the offensive line a little more by maybe putting DJ Humphries in. It might not have worked, but again, you're down 24 at the half. You probably have to try something. I think there was like 4 sacks in the first half. It might be time to make a move. Would it have made a difference? Probably not. To me, I think the bigger issue is I'm going to go back and talk about the decision making that the Chiefs GM made and the Chiefs front office made, which, like, listen, Chiefs have been to 5 Super Bowls in 6 years. Clearly they know what they're doing and they're right way more often than they're wrong. I think the biggest issue though was they drafted Kingsley Sumatea in the 2nd round, who was really a project tackle. I think they should have just gone after a veteran in free agency. They paid Hollywood Brown $13 million. They could have spent that money on a veteran tackle who could have just been okay. They don't need to be great there. If they had an okay tackle, okay, they still would have maybe had some issues because the Eagles' defensive line is really good and they still don't have a great right tackle, but you would have been much better off had they done that. In my opinion, in this offseason, that's what they need to do. Because when they lost to Tampa Bay, a handful of years ago now, 5 years ago at this point, when they lost that, I guess 4 years ago, when they lost that game though, kind of my main mindset was like, okay, like, yes, you were under pressure a bunch, but you had both your tackles missing. It was understandable, but they really haven't done a great job, even with making 3 straight Super Bowls and winning 2 of them. They haven't done a great job at the tackle position. I mean, I don't know if the Juwan Taylor signing has fully worked. Last game, last time they played in the Super Bowl against San Francisco, the pass rush was dominant in that game. The 49ers pass rush was dominant, but the Chiefs defense kept them in it through 3 quarters. If you remember, the Chiefs had 13 points in the first 3 quarters, and one of those was on a short field due to a muffed punt. They really only had, didn't have a single drive until overtime. That was a full drive down the field where they scored a touchdown. Their defense was good enough to keep them in that game, and then Mahomes was able to make magic happen when he could. In this game, the defense wasn't good enough to keep them in it, and the offensive line was too much of an issue. It's a problem they're going to have to just solve, and while they could have maybe tried to do things in this game, really it comes down to it was an issue all year, and it just bit them at the worst possible time. That's what I think. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from ya, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.